welcome to the Dressage with Sally channel. My name's Sally and today we are going to talk about buying your dressage horse. Whether you're buying your first dressage horse or your next dressage horse, this video is for you. I've seen many riders buy their first dressage horse and it's gone wrong so often. And the key to having a successful transition to a dressage horse is setting yourself up really well. What are some of those things you should be thinking about or doing or preparing for? Let's talk about that. Firstly, it's time to get clear on your goals. What are some of the things you want to achieve with this horse? What are some of the places you want to go? The awards you want to win, or the relationship you want to build. Do you want to ride prelim level at home, or are you wanting to ride Grand Prix at the Olympics? These are two very, very different goals, probably the either end of the spectrum. There are a million increments between the two, so let's talk about where you might be. Writing your goals down really helps. It helps you to form the idea in a complete way, and it also helps you to become clear. And you'll have a very clear idea, and sort of along the way you'll build a bit of a path as to how you're going to get there. And when you're writing your goals, when you're setting your goals, aim high. The biggest mistake I ever made was that all I wanted to do was ride a Grand Prix dressage horse, and that only took me 12 years to do. And I got to the end of that, I made it, I did it, and I kind of was left scratching my head wondering what I should do next. So, your goals are much more achievable than you think. So when you're setting your goals, really aim high. My suggestion is to double it. Wherever you think you might want to be, double it, whatever that might look like for you. And when you write it down, make sure you write it somewhere where you're going to come across it again. Do you have a diary? Can you write it down in there? Or a notebook, or put it on a sticky note and by your bedside table, whatever will work. But you want a goal that you want it written down so that you can come across it again and again, and just kind of check in to see where you're at. You don't need to check in every day, but it is good to be able to check in regularly, so have that somewhere handy. So once you've made your double-sized goal, that was the time to be bold and big and ballsy. Now's the time to think about the horse that's going to get you there. And in thinking about that horse, that's the time to bring your expectations down, because if you want to ride Grand Prix at the Olympics, you might have to have several stepping stones, several horses that are going to get you there. If you buy your Olympic horse and you've only ever ridden prelim at home, it might not be the best match, and you might not be setting yourself up for success. And that's the main point of this. We want you to set yourself up for success so that you can achieve what you had set out to do. Okay, so big goals, modest horse. Perfect. Now, so what do you want to do? If you want to ride prelim at home and you have a horse, then you are already away. You are set to go, set to start, and set to achieve what you want with that horse. Any horse can ride prelim. Any horse can compete prelim. So if you're aiming to ride, a fairly modest level at home, and that's fine, then whatever horse you've got, as long as it's sound and can carry you, then you are away. And again, if you want to ride Grand Prix at the Olympics, then you are going to have to it'll probably be a 2-horse process. The first one might get you into FEI, and then the second one you might have to make, or you might buy an FEI horse and then go further from then. But that's big thinking, big goals. So there's many horses on the market that would take you to FEI. You don't need the biggest, fanciest, shiniest, most well-bred, biggest moving horse. You just don't need it. You don't need a $35,000 horse. You need a $1,000 horse and $34,000 worth of lessons. That meme is for you. That's exactly what I did. I produced a dressage horse That was my goal, and I took that horse to Grand Prix. He wasn't well bred. He cost me $1,000 to breed, get on the ground, and we went from there. So you do not need an expensive horse to be able to ride Grand Prix. For me, you want temperament, you want fairly good conformation, good feet and good legs, and you want trainability or rideability. And those three things, you'll need someone to help you with those if you're not 100% sure how that goes, and that's where your coach comes in, or your mentor. So the next thing to think about is, what resources do you have to put towards this goal, to put towards the horse? Do you have enough time that you can ride your horse enough times a week that it's going to get you where you want to go? Can you make that time? Is that time becoming available? Do you have that time now? Have you made that time now to demonstrate to yourself that you've got that resource? The other thing to think about, other than how many times a week you ride, do you ride all year round? Or do you tend to take winter off for whatever reason? You don't have the right surface, you don't like riding in the rain, it's too cold, whatever. And it doesn't matter, as long as what you've been doing is probably what you're going to do soon. So if you need to have a horse that will cope with having 3 months off over winter, over the depths of winter, then you're not going to buy a big fancy one. It would be better if you bought one that was a bit older, had a bit more experience, so that when you put it out in the paddock, for some time, it's going to come back in and it's going to be okay, and it doesn't need to be, re-broken in or rehandled, retrained, whatever. It's going to cope with that kind of time off. So that's what you're looking for there. So remember, double your goals and be modest in the kind of horse you're looking for. Okay, so now let's look at how often you plan on seeing your coach. Are you thinking once a week, twice a week kind of thing, maybe more? Then you can be comfortable in knowing, if you buy a younger horse and one that's a little bit more, there's a lot more horse there, breeding, trainability, whatever, that because you've got that coach holding your hand the entire way, you're going to run into less problems, you're going to run into less challenges. If you have the strong, well-built young horse and you don't have someone holding your hand, that is setting yourself up for challenges, small challenges that are going to become big challenges, and we don't want that at all. So think about how often you can see a coach. That comes into the equation of what kind of horse you can buy. If you're only going to see your coach once a fortnight, then you will want to buy a horse with a bit more education and a bit more experience under its belt. And of course, if you're only planning on seeing your coach once a month, or not even that, then it would be better if you bought a horse that was going to do that teaching for you. Like if you're not going to have the coach work with you, then you have to get that education from somewhere. The older, more well-rounded horse is going to look after you, and you are going to have a better, easier time of it. And then the next thing to think about is, do you have access to professionals? So your farrier, vet, physio, all that kind of thing, dentist. You need those things to be able to keep a, well-oiled machine happening. The horse, especially a younger horse, has muscles that you're building up, and you're creating these muscles and making them bigger, and joints that you're using and working, and all of that is going to need support in some way. So do you have access to those people? Think about what you've got in your own telephone book, and if you don't have those people at hand, then your coach is probably a good place to touch base with, and talk about the professionals that they have access to, and that perhaps they might have some details they can pass on to you. And of course, once you get that horse, make sure you access those professionals regularly, all that thing, all those little management techniques. That is what is going to make sure you have a successful journey, and at the end of it, along the way and at the end of it, a sound horse. So that's the management of your horse and the help you're going to get from the coach. And next, let's look at your skill set. What skills do you have? Are you buying a young horse? Do you have those young horse skills? Have you done that before? This is kind of like getting a job. Can you write your resume to say, yes, I've done a young horse, yes, I've done this, that, and the other. I know how to overcome that problem, and that problem. If you can't write that resume, then perhaps that horse isn't for you. And, if that's the horse you want to get, that's when you need someone with those skills to come in and help you and make sure that journey is nice and smooth, or as smooth as possible. Because one of the biggest disparities that I see is that a rider with limited skills, they might have gone through Pony Club and then come out the other end, and then they've gone and grabbed the fanciest horse they could buy, and they found themselves really out of their depth. And then even some of those riders with the help of a coach, they really struggle through. And perhaps that horse is one to aim for, but maybe it's not the horse you need right now. You might need an interim horse that's going to help you get there. And that way you can get there quicker and smoother and safer, and everyone's happy, and you don't have to sacrifice, you don't have to have injuries or accidents or, safety concerns. You'll stay confident. And that's what we want here. In Europe, all the young riders are put on older horses, well-trained ones, and they go through that process until they have those skills, and then they are put on the young horses to then bring those through. And that's how come we see such a solid, base in Europe. All the adult riders have come through, being taught on well-trained horses. They become well-trained riders, and they pass it on to the young horses that they get. In Australia and in other parts of the world, we tend not to do that. And what can happen, and I've seen it so often, I'm sure you've seen it, where a rider gets a horse and they're mismatched, and instead of having a smooth journey where everybody is learning and building an education and building muscles and achieving their goals and developing, you've got a rider that is just all the time managing the horse, managing resistances, managing misbehaviors, managing, I really wish that people would get on top of that sooner. And the way to do that is with your coach. The way to do that is to get a horse that's not quite as, don't bite off so much that you can't chew it. Make sure you seek out help very early on. If there's a little problem, seek help before it becomes a big problem. And of course, you don't want to buy a horse that doesn't match you, because then it's very hard to, what do you do with that horse? If it's not working after 2 years, do you keep going, or do you sell it? So this is why we want to have a journey that is just, comfortable and progressive and safe. And that's how I started. I found myself a riding school that had horses trained to FEI, and I learnt all the dressage, I learnt all the movements, I learned how to ride them, I learned how to finesse my aids. I started on the quiet, slow horse, and as I got better and as I learnt what I was doing, I've ridden my whole life. So when I was in my early 20s, I took myself to this riding school, and I was there, once or twice a week easily. And I did that for 2 years, at least 2 years, maybe longer. And what that process did for me is, it's kind of like going and getting, a diploma or a degree. You spend 2 or 3 years or 4 years, whatever, learning and, working out how things are done. And then once you get these skills, you can then finesse them and refine them so that you can become a great rider and you can make great horses. And that's a process that I strongly recommend, everyone who intends to go and ride dressage. I strongly recommend you go do that. And that it's really going to help you form a better idea of what you're capable of and what, those capabilities, what are you going to do with them? You're going to get an idea, and you don't need talent. Talent's great, but if you won't do the work, if that's not something you can do, then your goals are going to be hard to achieve. So yeah, I strongly encourage you to go and find a dressage school and find well-trained horses and a well-trained coach, and go there twice a week, whatever, for a couple of years. And if you think that's a big outlay, like a dressage horse is a big outlay. Either in whatever resources you have, if that's too much time, you don't have the time, or you can't afford it, or it's too far. I don't really think there's any excuses. A friend of mine, she travels 1,500 kilometers to a dressage school that suited her, and it had schoolmasters that suited her, coaches that suited her, and that's what she did. She still does it, and she is determined to make this happen and to learn what she needs to learn, so that she takes that home to her horse and things are so much better. Her journey is more comfortable, safe, confident, the horse is happier. This is what we're looking for. And of course, if your goal is to ride prelim level at home, really all you need is a horse. Any level horse, any breed of horse. You don't need a particularly well-bred horse. You can learn so much on the horse that you have now. But that horse is there's plenty for you to learn from that horse. And if you added a coach into that mix, then there's a lot of things that you can do with that particular horse. And don't feel like you need something fancier. Don't feel like you need something younger. You don't. You need other help, other kind of help first. And only once you've exhausted all those options, that's when you might go to another horse. But if you've got one at home and you just want to ride prelim, novice, whatever, elementary even at home, that's the way I would go. A thoroughbred can easily go to FEI. A quarter horse cross could go to FEI. A stock horse even. There's so many breeds of horses, and people have these horses at home. If you want to learn about dressage and you want to learn about riding, those horses are fine. If it's when you want to be competitive, that's when you need a bit more breeding, but you do have to weigh it up with what you've got to start with. So if you can take all of these things into consideration, there's so many things I've shared here, you'll be really well set up so that when you do get your dream dressage horse, the chances of you making something to be proud of are so much higher. Plus, you'll have an experience that'll be really, really rewarding. And if you want your next ride to be happy, confident, and connected, grab yourself one of the Dressage with Sally workout guides. Pop over to our website, dressagewithsally.com, and have a look there. Find a guide that suits you and your horse. Thanks so much for listening. I know there's a lot out there that's demanding your attention, so I really appreciate you staying here and joining me today for this video. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so that you don't miss an episode. Thanks so much. I'll talk to you soon.